Welcome to Laughter for All. It's the podcast with Comedian Nazareth.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you for joining me for 173 weeks together. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being with us. It's always encouraging to look at the stats and see where we at, and we're doing very well in the U.S., in Canada, in Ukraine, in Jordan, in India, in Germany, and just South Africa, New Zealand. Just amazing that you guys are watching all over the world and listening to this podcast. So really, we appreciate you. We thank you guys for doing that, and just a little update on my career. I do the Laughter for All Crusades, which is like a big concerts that we do for free to allow people who cannot afford to go to a comedy concert or to a comedy club and have to pay, 2 drink minimum and all that they can come for free and enjoy. A wonderful show. The other day, my daughter was performing at the Comedy Store. I didn't recommend it. I didn't encourage her, but she was trying. She's going to law school. She wants to go to Vanderbilt. She's on the waiting list. So if you know anybody at Vanderbilt, please let me know. We can nudge her because she's not into sports. So and we don't have the money, the big money to get her in there. So anyway, watch the documentary on Netflix. But anyway, so I went there. It was $15 a ticket, and this is the original room. It's not like the big main room. $15 plus 2 drink minimum. Each drink was $17. I don't drink alcohol, so I end up paying over $10 for each drink, which is carbonated water and a soda. So that's why we do these things for free. The Laughter for All events in California for free. So we allow people to come in and enjoy a free show. Now, if you're out of California, then you have to pay tickets for my concert. There's a tour coming up in October called the Hope in 24 Hours comedy tour with Nazareth. And this is coming in. So far, we have several dates in Texas, Oklahoma, and we're going for Wisconsin as well. So anyway, that's where we at. July 22nd in San Bernardino, California. We're going to have the Laughter for All comedy concert. You can go to my site or to the laughterforall.org site and boom, get your free tickets. You have to register to get free tickets. You can't just walk in there and get them. Okay, so this is where we at. I'm done with this. I have a friend. Oh, and I love this guy. We got introduced during doing events in prisons. We were not in prisons. We were in prison, but we came out at night and went back in the next morning. Then we came out at night, then went back the next morning. And most of the time, comedians didn't perform together in prison at the yard. They always separate us. So our hangout time was in the hotel lobby or, at the end of the event. But I love that guy. He was so good looking and he knew it, so it was a problem. But we had to deal with it. But he's a good friend of mine. The second time we got together, we were overseas. I think we were in Canada doing a conference, and they said Steve Geyer is gonna go first. I go, I can't. No, I can't follow this guy. They said, nope, that's how the order. He wants to do it. He wants to go up first, then you go second. I said, okay, give us 15 minutes in between break so I can, the audience would forget how funny he was, and then but it went great. It's great to see. So it's so good to have him back and to have him on our podcast. Please welcome my friend Steve Geyer. Steve, how are you? You're upside down right now, and I can't hear you. Yes, he's in Australia right now, and they are under. So that's why he's upside down. But yes, we can see he's a tech guy. So don't worry, he's gonna get it fixed, and he's gonna try to go upside down and defeat gravity. Here we go. Here we go. He's turning on. Now we can. Now all we need to do is be able to hear him. I still can't hear him, so it's okay. It will happen. And while we're waiting for him, I want you to know on June 20th, I'm going to be live on CBN, the 700 Club, doing live. And then also they're doing an interview. Also before that, on June 16, 2023, I'm going to be in Visalia doing a comedy concert in Visalia. Also on September 23rd, we will be in on September 23rd, I will be in Merced at the Merced Theater doing a Laughter for All. That's another free event. It's free for you guys, so that's going to happen there. So, Steve is trying to come back with us. He is now, here he is. Now he's good. All we need to do is be able to hear his voice. No, we still can't hear him. He does have a great voice, people, but trust me on this. So, we'll just wait for him. And while we're waiting for him, I just want you to know on June 4th, I'm going to be in Fisher, Indiana, doing an event with for the Christian Comedy Association. I'm speaking to them. And let's see if Steve is with us. Hello. Now he is. He's good.
Hey.
Now we can hear him. How are you?
Wonderful. It kept asking me to allow you to have access to my microphone, and I kept saying yes, 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 yes. But thank you for that lovely introduction, man. It's funny because when I tell people ask me all the time if I know you, and I go yeah, and I go, oh really? I said yeah. I said I met him in prison, and then I just leave it. I don't say anything else, and they're like, what? Yeah, I met him in prison, and I just leave, and then so it's like, why? So it's actually kind of fun to just kind of leave people wondering, why were you in prison? So
It's funny. Every time I tell people I go to prison, they think Guantanamo. I'm like, no, just because I'm Middle Eastern
that's for
doesn't.
you. Yeah,
You're not specifically going to Guantanamo unless
yeah,
you're like a terrorist thing or cell or something.
that
But
was
anyway, no,
specifically
I've never.
designed. Well, I'll tell you this. Really got a really sweet message from Jim Harvey. He was with Prison Fellowship when we were doing Starting Line. It was a great program. This is the thing that you and I did.
Yeah.
And he sent me a quick, comment and just said, "Hey, man, I really enjoyed that time, and it was a really special time. That was probably, as far as a entertainer / minister, whatever. That, man, working with Prison Fellowship was some of the most challenging but the most rewarding stuff I've ever done in my life."
It was great, and it was good to meet real people.
Yeah,
To meet entertainers who have the same heart to serve, to bring a message of Christ. It
yeah,
was just the greatest time, and then that's when we all met. Me, you, Tim Hawkins, and
yeah,
then Gilbert Escoval, and different comedians and different entertainers
yeah,
that we still to this day, spend time together once in a while. That's our connection. Like when someone mentions Steve Geyer or something, like, yes, we had that community of entertainers that go to prisons, and it was
yeah.
so why did you okay, let me ask you this first. You were a comedian like myself. You were a comedian before, in the world, in the mainstream, before you became a Christian. What was that like?
It was, oh boy, it's funny, so long ago. It was, at first, I would say it was more fun because there was more freedom, to just do whatever, and it's kind of funny how things have kind of come full circle. But I became a Christian, and then what I realized very quickly was it wasn't necessarily the material that I wanted to be beholden to. That it was like, because my material was, I always tried to work clean anyway, but it was the culture of the clubs, and what it's like being in the club culture. It's not conducive to a healthy mindset. And I early on figured out, as a Christian, this wasn't going to fit for me. But what was real interesting was going from the secular side, where you could say anything you wanted to, and then start doing Christian comedy, where it was just wokeness in reverse. Like now it's the other extreme of people saying you can't say that. And it's like, really, and I remember early on when I first started doing churches, how people would just, they were so like, oh, I can't believe you said that, and if I told you the material I was doing, you would think nothing of it. Today, you'd be like, oh, that's nothing. But back then, this would have been my first Christian comedy set would have been 1980, 80, early or late 81.
Late 80. Oh,
Late,
wow.
early 82 would have been when I first started doing Christian stuff. And it was a baptism by fire, buddy. I'll tell you that. But it's fun. I learned a lot, man. I did. I learned a lot. I learned to, there's a great scripture where Paul says, I'm all things to all people. And I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder when I would go in, like, I'm a comic, and like, everybody bow down to me, But I learned that, and this, and you embodied this really well. We go in as a servant. I'm coming in. Yeah, I want to make you laugh. Yeah, I'm going to do my craft. Yeah, I'm going to do what I do as an entertainer and as a comic, and hopefully, as a minister of the gospel. But I'm coming to serve you, and I learned that real quick. I was very fortunate to have some pretty good comedy mentors. Like, they're not here for you, you're there for them, was something that Lenny Clark, I don't know if you ever worked with Lenny, he was out of Boston. But Lenny Clark would say, you're here for them, they're not here for us. Right.
That's a very good advice.
Yeah. And Lenny was a headliner, and Lenny was very well known. He got Stephen Wright started, and Paula Poundstone, Elaine Boozler, all the Boston comics back in the day when you and I were starting out, who were already, the headline in the mainstream. But what I really appreciated about Lenny was he said, and I was just a young punk, and he was just like, you got to learn very quickly. You are here to serve these people. And he wasn't a Christian or anything, he was just like, you're here to serve this audience. And so that was ingrained in me pretty early on. I was very fortunate to have learned that lesson, or have been, to have been taught that lesson. I don't know. It took me a while to learn it, but to my utter shame. But yeah, man. But it was. How about for you though? What was it like for you going from the straight up doing stand up for clubs to now going, oh my gosh, I'm in a church? What was that like for you?
To me, it was I had to take time to, where I was very nervous, because what happened is like a computer, you load it up with information. When I was in the mainstream, I was, just hearing all the bad language, talking, doing the bad jokes, all that. And then when I became a Christian, I just started reading the word every day, hanging around Christians. So it took a while before my mind was filled with the right stuff, so I didn't have to worry after that. After the first, praise God, I never slipped or said something bad, but I was very nervous talking to the audience the first year, because how comedians, you're quick to respond, and the first respond, your mind still have some filth in it. Yeah. And it's just interesting, Steve. Like the other day, I was telling the audience, I said, I went to see my daughter perform, and she did like 7 minutes, 5 minutes, and they had like 10 other comics. And I'm telling you, it was just, even though I started in the clubs, even though my ears are not like virgin ears, I've heard comedy so much. The MC, he was a homosexual, but wasn't the point. The language he used, the material he used, the content, it was like having, I was telling my daughter, I said, you're not going back there. I don't want to go back there. It's like having a white curtain and you throw ink at it and it doesn't go away for a long time. And to me, I was like, the level of comedy, the language, it's not just pushing the envelope. It's got to a point where it's not even funny. I was disgusted, and I was just sitting there looking at, I'm like, that's not even funny. And people were laughing, and it was the nervous laugh. I'm looking to a woman next to me. I'm like, you should not be laughing at that stuff. And it just so when you said earlier, Steve, you said, the mind, it does something to you when you're in those clubs. You're right. So yeah, it was different. It wasn't difficult. So how old? You were probably a baby when you started doing mainstream. I was in high school.
I started doing comedy when I was a junior in high school. I had a comedy partner. His name was Danny Campos, and he's down in Tampa. Hopefully he's either watching this or is going to hear that I mentioned him. But Danny Campos was a year younger than me in school. So, but we were in the band together, and he was just hilarious. And there was just something about the dynamic between the two of us where he was actually, and I'll say this till the day I die, he's the funnier of the two of us. And I was always the straight man. We did a talent show together, and we had a blast together. But he was so quick-witted, and he was kind of like, and I'm not exaggerating at all. He was kind of like a Robin Williams, Jonathan Winters as a high school kid. I mean, he was just real quick-witted, and so I was a straight guy, but I wanted to do comedy so bad that I pursued it. Danny didn't pursue it. He could have. I mean, he would have been phenomenal. I think he should still do some comedy to this day. So, but I started out doing that, and going back to what you said about the club thing, what's really interesting, Naz, is that you said something, and I just felt it in my stomach. I was like, man, you are so right. There's something about the language. Like, I'm not a prude. I know you're not a prude. If it's funny, I'm going to laugh. Funny's funny. Even if it's something that I'm like, oh gosh, I'm cringing while I'm laughing. Funny's funny. Ricky Gervais is funny as heck. He is hilarious. He does this great thing. He attacks our faith. He's a staunch atheist. He attacks our faith, but I can laugh at it because it's funny. The way he structures, like, one of the things that what I did when I became a Christian, I started writing differently. My constructing comedy was different. It was like actually figuring out, the setup of here's the punch, here's the premise, here's the callback, here's the tag, what do I want to do, So I got more methodical once I became a Christian. But I attributed that to what you said. I did the same thing. I started reading the word every single day, and we're transformed by the renewing of our mind. And I actually got more creative. And the more creative I got, the less I needed to cuss. And so I remember too, that I was so afraid I was going to say a cuss word on stage. I remember, like, when you were talking about, like, I said, what I felt in my stomach too, is when you said you were afraid that you would respond to somebody in the audience.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Because if you got a heckler, you're like, and this is the thing about hecklers, it's not necessarily what you say to them, it's just how quickly you say it, right? Right. And it really is, because sometimes my best line for a heckler was this. It was not creative at all, but it was this. They would say something, and I would look at them, and I kind of nod at them where they're kind of, yeah, shut up. And then I would turn and right. And so it's that, but you're not expecting, you're thinking that, oh, he's going to say something clever, and shut up. And then boom, right into it.
Get a laugh.
Right. And you get
not in a church.
Yeah. Oh no, not in. In fact, I joke about this all the time, but I remember the first time I got asked to do a thing at a church. I was opening for Sinbad, and the local newspaper did a write-up on me, and this whole thing about Sinbad, and then at the very bottom in this little one paragraph, not even a paragraph, it was a sentence: opening for Sinbad, Christian comedian Steve Geyer. And I was a new Christian. I wasn't a Christian comedian. I was a comedian who had recently converted. Right. So, my soul and my spirit were saved, but my mouth was not yet quite saved. Right. And so I get booked for this thing, and man, I want to tell you, nobody told me, that I assumed they knew my stuff. And so nobody told me I had to change my material. And I like to joke that was the first time I ever heard the scripture being hollered from the people in the church: crucify him, we want Barabbas. And so it was a baptism by fire, I will tell you that. But I tell you, but here's what I love about yours. Like, this is what I like about, every comic's got their own thing. I love how charming you are. There's one of the things that I always enjoy about watching you is the audience. I like to watch the audience while other comics are working. Mm-hmm. And some people like sit back and kind of hold it's like they're on an airplane, they're waiting for it to take off. They're not quite sure if they're safe or not yet, Uh-huh. And it's funny when I watch you do your stuff, people are always leaning forward, and they lean into you, and
they're trying to understand what I'm saying.
That's true. That's true. And there's a new bit for you, man. But I always thought I always enjoyed how engaging you were, and all that. And I always admired that. I always appreciated that about the way you did your stand up.
Now, you were very, very funny. You were doing great, and then all of a sudden we hear Steve Geyer is now a youth pastor in Georgia or in Florida or
Nashville.
In Nashville. Why is that? What made you leave?
Oh boy. Well, it's interesting. I had two young ones at home. Couple of things, and I don't talk about this publicly very often, but I was offered a developmental deal with ABC. A buddy of mine, another comic friend of mine, and I had written a pilot for a spinoff of Home Improvement, and I got offered a developmental deal with ABC, and it was like, is everybody's dream. My dream as a comic was to do the Carson show. He was still alive and actually, still hosting while I was doing stand up in the early days. And they told me the deal and everything, and it was going to be a really cool thing. And, but I said, I mentioned, I said, I don't know if I want to raise my family in Los Angeles because I had to move. And, I wasn't ready to make a move to Los Angeles. And I'll never forget it. The head of the agency, the New York office, was like, well, Kathy and the kids will stay in Nashville. We need you out in LA to focus. We need to get you with an acting coach. We need to get you with, they wanted to kind of reshape my body, get me with a fitness guy and all, just kind of change me, to make me more television worthy. And Naz, my stomach turned, and because I was raised without a dad, and I thought, man, so I came home and talked to Kathy, the kid. Graham and Kirsten were, Graham was still in diapers, and Kathy said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to turn it down. I don't feel right about doing it. I just can't do it. I don't want to forfeit. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet forfeits his soul?" Well, when I turned that deal down, and no blood, no foul, but you kind of become like, okay, here, we've offered you to do this incredible deal, man. It's every comic's dream, and you're going to turn it down. It was kind of like, okay. So my agency looked at me as not being fully committed to the craft or committed to my career. And I was committed to my career, but I just didn't want to uproot my family at that time. I just didn't have a good feeling about it. Right. So things started to a little bit. At the same time, God was working on my heart, because at our church, we were kind of snake bit with youth pastors. We would have a youth pastor, and they would come and they'd stay about a year or so, and then they'd leave. And one day, so all this is going on. I've turned down the developmental deal. I turned down the move to LA, all this stuff. I've got, a wife and two little kids. And I'm like, yeah, what am I going to do? And honestly, Naz, I really felt like the Lord, I can count on probably one hand the number of times I ever felt like the Lord audibly spoke to me, where I heard it, that I was supposed to at least throw my hat in the ring to be the senior high youth pastor at my church. It was a pretty big church. And so I told Kathy, and she's like, let me pray about it. No. And so I promise you, man, I'm not making this up. The next day, and Stephen Mansfield can call you and tell you, a mentor and my pastor at the time, and a mentor, and ended up becoming my boss, this guy named Stephen Mansfield, was at Belmont Church.
Oh, the singer, right?
No.
No, not Stephen Mansfield. The one, I performed with Stephen Mansfield. Yeah.
So he calls me at home, and he goes, and I remember the conversation verbatim. "Hey, Geyer, how you doing?" "Good, man. How you doing?" "Good." He goes, I can't shake this, man. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think you're supposed to be the new senior high youth pastor at Belmont Church." And I went, "I think you're right." And I knew it. So that's what it was. And I felt like the Lord, Proverbs 16, in his heart of man plans his course, but the Lord directs his steps.
Yeah.
And so I was able to stay home more, got to be around, raise my kids. I actually ended up being the PTO president at my kids' school for 2 years.
That's amazing. That's the best. We need that today for fathers to do that.
But this is what I learned too, man. I learned what it's like to be on staff at a church and have a guest speaker come in, and what it can be sometimes. And so after my tenure there, and then after I did another 10 years at a church in Georgia, Kathy came to me and she said, the kids are older. They're getting, our daughter was already in college. Our son's getting ready to graduate. She said, "You need to go back on the road." She goes, and God bless her, she knew I was kind of at that place where I love being a pastor. I love doing that, but I missed the craft of comedy. I missed, you know more than anybody, man, that thrill of taking a room full of strangers
Oh
who
yeah.
know you and then making them laugh and then offering them something of value to take home. Man, it's like there's nothing like that in the world. So Kathy really started encouraging me to go back out on the road. And I just tested the waters a little bit. And man, it was some ways it was like starting all over again. It was like, nobody knew who I was. But then I had enough track record. I had 3 records out on Star Song. I had a Bananas DVD. I did a
Right.
few television appearances and everything. So people kind of knew who I was, and they were like, yeah. So they started bringing me in. And then my second stint now is basically more focused on, like, I do marriage events, a lot of relationship stuff. And then I do stuff from my new book, Who the Pooh Are You, which is a family friendly event. It's for kids ages 10 and up. So you can bring your kids, and it's the whole thing about learning how to get along with your family using Winnie the Pooh characters. And so I started doing that. But yeah, it was a switch. But I tell you, Naz, the thing that I took away from it, being on staff with those churches, was it made me a better guest. It made me a better, like, I would come in and ask the church what they need instead of kind of coming in and going, hey, I'm their speaker, I'm your comedian, or, let me come do my thing. I would, I can't, going back to what Lenny told me years and years ago, which was, how can I serve these people? And so I would ask, is there anything I need to know? Is there anything like, a case in point, I was at a church. I was in Canada. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. I was out west. Gosh, I know, in Lloydminster. I was in
Oh
Lloydminster.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been there.
You've been,
I know
you've been,
exactly what you're talking about.
you've been there. And I came in, and there was just something in me was just kind of heavy. And so I just turned to one of the staff members. I said, is there something? I said, I just feel so heavy in my spirit. Is there something I need to know?
Mm.
And their eyes watered up, and they said, can I talk to you privately? And I said, absolutely. So they took me into a prayer room, and they just dumped the truck and told me everything was going on. And I'm so glad they did, because I changed my material, and I was able to talk about, grace that night, specifically about their situation, without bringing up or addressing their situation, if
The
you know what I mean.
situation. Yeah.
I was able to use a, New Testament context for a thing. And, I had a lot of people come up and say, oh man, you have no idea how helpful that was and everything. And, oh, you must be a prophet. And I say, well, no, I got a little inside information, but I will say this. And I wonder what your take on this is too. I believe there's a certain element of prophetic in all comics. I think there's
Yes.
something. Okay, you with me?
I agree with you, and it's not because of us. It's because God wants to bless that audience. If you go as a comedian, and you really, so true about this. Like when I go to a church or an event and stuff, I pray, Lord, how can I honor you with this?
Hmm.
How can you get the glory? Because I'm a comedian. I want my glory. And, when they laugh, that's mine.
Right.
When they leave, what they leave with, that's yours.
Yeah, and when it's that, it's that beautiful thing too, where I don't know if you've ever had this happen. People will come up and, like, they'll kind of replay my jokes for me and go, "Oh, when you said this," I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm glad you liked that." But I don't know if this ever happens to you, but and again, I'm a big fan of yours. You know how to minister. You know how to be in the moment. You know how to not have just a canned message that, we all have things that we'll kind of refer to because it's kind of our life message. But you don't go in with a canned ham. You go in and you cook for them while you're there. And
Mm.
one of the things that I found remarkable is people come up to me and say, "Wow, tonight when you said this, I just really, God, it just ministered to me." And I look at them and I go, "I never said that." And they're like, "Yeah, you did." I go, "No, I didn't." I said, because I've been there. I've been sitting there listening to a teaching before, and I'm hearing the scripture, and all of a sudden I'll write a note about something that the Lord is just kind of putting in my heart, and I'll write it down, and sometimes people will attribute what God is speaking to them specifically to me. And I'm like, "Oh, I never said that."
You never said
And they're
that.
like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." So that's the neat part of this supernatural end, I know Ricky Gervais always jokes about, he just goes, there's no such thing as supernatural. And it's like, okay, that's your opinion. My opinion, there is supernatural. And here's an example of it. I was talking about something that was totally different. This person heard this. It really ministered to them. It really helped them. They attributed it to me, but I never said it. And so that's the beauty of the craft, because I don't know if the day when you and I were catching up, with COVID, man, I almost left comedy for good. And if it weren't for my friend Al Fike, he's a dinosaur like us.
I know.
Al's been around forever. If it weren't for my friend Al Fike, I would not be doing stand up again.
Really? What did he say to you?
He just reached out. You know what, man? The guy's a champ. He called me one day, and Al and I were always like orbiting each other. It was like we were always like, either I was just in the city he was in, or he was just in the city that I'm in now. We were kind of flip flopping, and we would bump into each other at the Duff Awards. Every now and then we'd get our pictures taken together, but we never really got to hang out. But we always had a mutual respect and a love for each other. And gosh, it's been over a year now. But Naz, he called me up and he said, "Hey man, I was just thinking about you. Are you okay?" And buddy, I don't know if you've ever dealt with this. I've always been very.
He just froze on me.
Comfortable being a little bit more vulnerable about that. Oh, am I there? We good?
Yeah. You're back.
Okay. I don't know if you ever struggle with this. I think all performers do at a certain level, but I had never experienced this level of depression before. And I was in a real deep depression, and I didn't talk to anybody about it, wouldn't say anything. And Al said, "Are you okay? Are you doing okay?" And I said, "You know what? Because you asked and you just called me out of the blue, I'm going to tell you." And Naz, I just jumped the truck on him. I said, "Here's where I am. My heart is broken. I don't know about our craft anymore. I don't know, if I want to do stand-up anymore. It's not fun anymore. It's too dangerous." And, Al's like, and he was so empathetic to me, and so sympathetic and so compassionate. And he goes, "Geyer, I've never known you to be a coward." And I'm like, "Shut up," and it was that thing of, I was kind of running away from stand-up. And so I told him, I said, "Man," I said, if I do stand up again, I'm not doing it alone. I will never go out again doing a tour by myself. Those days are over. I said, "But I will go out with a friend. I will go out and tour with a friend." And so we're putting together this tour in the fall. It's called The Great Unwokening, because we're going to have fun with, because there's the Great Awakening and then there's the Great Unwokening. And we're not trying to divide the room or make anybody angry, but it's just, we're going to tell the truth using humor and let you decide if you want to laugh at it or not, And so, but yeah, man, I think, I guess like COVID, here we are, living on the road and doing personal appearances. Right. And, I get some books, royalties on book sales and video hits and all that stuff. But the bulk of my income is touring. And man, when COVID hit, we were shut down. We couldn't do anything. You could go to the liquor store, but you couldn't go to a comedy show. And so it got really weird for a while, and I just got real depressed. And then I saw, these comics getting punched. People getting.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like, oh my gosh, And then, but Al Fike, man, he really, just as a brother comic, there's kind of like there's this kind of unspoken brotherhood with us too. It's kind of like we're competitive with each other. We all want to do well. We all want to be the funniest on that night, but not at the expense of the other guy. It's never like, I hope he bombs, or because the worst thing is for a comic to bomb in front of you and then you got to go follow it. Right. But there's this of competitiveness makes us better. It makes us better writers and stuff. But I've seen where some comics never could they could never turn the corner of being competitive to provoke me to be better. And what I love is like, the stuff like watching you and Bill. You remember Bill Arnold, the comic magician?
Yes, of course.
Bill just, gosh, he just would provoke me to be that much better because he was so stinking funny. And I just, I love that. And, there's a joke that used to tell that I every time he did it, I knew it was coming and I heard it and I still laughed. It was the one where you're talking. It was an old take on the Hertz rental car where you're running through the airport. I don't know if you even remember this bit that you used to do, but do you remember talking about running through the airport?
Yes.
Okay. Man, and what's funny was I knew it was coming. I knew the line, I knew the cadence, and I would laugh every time. And that's what kind of made me realize, talking with Al and going through this stuff, is that comedy is important. There are things like people say to me, "Oh, my favorite line of yours is this. I use your line all the time." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. You're not using it on stage, are you?"
Yeah. Yeah. You can use it anywhere, but not on stage.
Yeah. But yeah. So I'm curious, what did you like? Now, you, man, gosh, you just killed during COVID, man. You started this live podcast and everything. That's been going great guns for you, hasn't it?
When COVID happened, I wanted, like, I'm not, I'm sitting home, I'm not doing anything. And I know there's a lot of people sitting home, but the difference is I can make people laugh and I can encourage them. So I said, Lord, what do I do? So I started this Live with Naz daily show, and it just went on for 2 years. I mean, but it was my way to, to be creative. And you know how when you think of a joke, you want to try it out, and that's what makes, and if it works, you feel great. That's what encourages us. So I started doing it, and I built a community of people that I friends right now. I mean, these people I've never met before COVID, but right now it's like their family, their
Uh,
fans, and some
yeah.
of them are watching right now, and others, and
Hi,
it just
family.
yes, and they feel connected to them, and to me it was great. It's kept me going, and you know what? It was a point where I really, Steve, I went, is this over, Lord? Are we done? Is all these dates that we're doing going, okay, well, we're doing this event because there's a bigger thing. There's a next plateau.
Mm.
Were those the good days that we're going to look back and go, wow, that was great. But God, no, no. You know what? I am busier right now than I've ever been before
Oh,
COVID.
that's great, man. I
And
love.
because, and not because I'm a better doing marketing better or doing something better and stuff. It just, the need is huge right now. The need of the Christian community for someone who can do clean and be funny,
Yeah, be funny. Yeah.
not just tell Adam and Eve jokes, like really funny, as good as any club comedian, clean. Plus, you get a lot of people who are really not Christians that want to come to a to a church to hear a comedian, or to a place to hear a comedian, because they're sick and tired of the garbage and the woke and all that. And I don't think, like you said earlier, we divide the audience. I think your audience who come see you and see me, they're not divided. They're sick and tired of that craziness, and they
Yeah.
coming to laugh. Now we have to be careful. Like, I'm like you. I'm not political. I don't
No,
I
no.
don't do political stuff to where I divide the audience that way. But it comes to a Christian. But I want to take time just to ask you this, Steve. I want to make sure people get. Tell us about the Shameless thing, the book, or the project you do called Shameless.
Well, it's interesting that in that and now that book is even more like uh apropos for today than it was when I wrote it in 2016. It started out as a blog. And my Holly Smith, my dear friend and editor, I was doing some blogging and stuff, and so she was editing it for me and stuff. And um, Holly emailed me and said, "Hey, your blog's due," and I was like, "I'm having trouble. I'm trouble wrapping it up." And she said, "Well, how short are you?" Meaning how many words? 500 words. And I said, "Holly, I'm not short. I'm long." And she said, "Well, how many words?" I said, 20,000. And she's like,
Wow.
"Yeah, she should send it to me." So I sent it to her, and the next day or the day after that, I get a message from her. She said, "Steve, I would call you, but I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to talk without crying. You have got to write this as a book."
Wow.
And I was like, seriously? She said, "Yeah." And then she told me a personal story about a chapter that she was looking at and
Be specific, please, if you can. Tell us what is it about. What was the blog about? What made her cry? Stuff like that. I want to hear that.
about how powerful. Well, it was about how one of the things that I don't use a lot of, which I really don't like to use, is sarcasm. And people think, oh, sorry. It's like, if you really understand the root of sarcasm and what it really means, it means to tear someone's flesh. It means to tear your flesh. In other words, sarcasm always leaves a mark. No matter how innocent we want it to be, it's always going to leave a mark, because sarcasm is sometimes a mean truth, right? It's truth, but it's mean, but it's cloaked in humor, right? And so the thing that started it, well, let me back up, because that was the chapter that she shared, a family member shared, that she shared with a family member, and they were so cut to the heart because they realized that was what they were doing to other people, right? And they didn't realize they were doing it. But how it really started is my friend Jason Foster, one of my favorite bass players on the planet. He and I are sitting in he was on the worship team, and I got to speak later that night, and we were in the kind of the guest house thing where they had people that were all the speakers were for this week-long event. And I started talking to him, and I could feel this heaviness on him, talking to him about the power of shame. And his wife, she's so sweet, she was asleep, or kind of half asleep on the couch. And when I started talking to Jason, she actually sat up and looked at me. She said, how did you know that?
Wow.
Because it was so specific to him. And I said, I didn't know it about him, I know it about me. So it was this blog about how shame is powerful, and how what it does is that shame causes us to cover up. It makes us, it's Adam and Eve were ashamed, so they covered up. They knew they were naked. All of a sudden, they didn't know they were naked until they were ashamed. And if you look in the scriptures, and this is what I found, when I looked in the scriptures, the word shame is never used in a positive light, ever. It's always in negative light, as to be ashamed. It says, we are not ashamed. We are not ashamed. We're ashamed. And I started realizing that conviction is good. Owning our stuff is good, but shame is crippling. Shame is one of those things that makes you curl up in a ball and want to hide. Conviction gives you that, oh my gosh, aha moment, and you want to do something about it. Shame, it's that, oh my God, I can never show my face again, blah, blah, blah. So that was kind of the context of this blog, but Naz, I couldn't finish it. It just kept going and going and going and going and going. So I kept writing it. And then one day my daughter was in college. She was home from school. And I said, hey, would you read this and just tell me what you think? And this is my kid. My kids know me. My kids are not impressed with me at all.
No, me neither.
Although I am my daughter's hero. We're here in Georgia right now, helping take care of her newborn twins. But
still not impressed by your comedy.
But still not impressed by my comedy. There you go. And she read it, and she came back to me and she cried. She said, Dad, you have to write this as a book. And that I knew. So then, and I address a lot of different things, how shame visited me, how I had to write the book without shaming other people, because there are people that were living and dead that are referred to in the book, but there's enough grace language around it that you really can't tell who I'm talking about. But what I found is people that read the book, and teachers especially, I get so many emails from teachers who say, I wish every teacher on the planet would read this book. It is so helpful as a teacher working with young people and how to communicate to them. But yeah, man, it just kind of took off, and I was very grateful for it. The only thing I wish I had done, I kind of made a dumb move, and it wasn't a marketing decision. I spent so much time in the book, and it took me 2.5 years to write it. I poured so much of myself, and it was raw. I really felt undressed and naked when that book came out. It was really hard. And I didn't want to be the shame speaker. So I wouldn't take booking to book me to do a book to do it. And I look back on it now with some regret. Now I'm doing them now, talk about it now, and do a talk on shame and all that. But as at the time, I was so I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I was so like, ugh. But then I realized there were other people that haven't talked about it yet. They haven't addressed it yet. And here I am on the other side. I'm over it. I'm tired of it. And it really, it kind of made me realize I was being kind of selfish. It was like, I got mine, now you go get yours kind of thing. So but man, it was a hard book to write, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, and I'm so grateful. And Holly, and my wife was like, man, Kathy was the biggest champion. She would just like, she would make the house so quiet, like I could just go up in my office and write. And
Wow.
yeah, man. So that's yeah, that was
It's the reason I asked you because in your book, and I'm gonna order it. I will ask you as we close when we close the show. How can people get a hold of it, or if
yeah.
it's an
And
Audible or something?
Yeah.
Is it on Audible?
Yeah, you can get it. I don't know, not yet. I don't think so.
You
It's not,
should put it on Audible, man.
Word of Life Press. Word of
Yeah.
Life.
Well,
Is
what
it?
happened because I'm originally from the Middle East, from the Holy Land, and our culture is called the honor and shame culture. Now, it's not in a deeper level like your book story, but in our life, like in the American culture is all about law abiding. For example, as long as you're following the law, you're a good person.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You can be
Yeah.
where our culture, if your dad was an alcoholic or he was a bad person or stuff, that shame kind of comes to you as well. You inherit that shame
Yeah.
with the family name and all that. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you do something, it's either brings shame to the family. Let's say you're dating the wrong person, or your daughter wants to marry someone who's not from the same level family. That's called shame. That brings shame to the whole family. So they're always walking with that shame. But I know the shame you're talking about, and this is interesting because I've been teaching a weekend service at churches, and it's called Shake Your Head. And one of the points is like, when you feel shame, there's always that reminder that's like, I choose to shake my head, take every thought captive, and think,
Yeah.
if anyone is Christ, he's a new creation. Behold, all things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. And I keep reminding myself, like, what did Christ think of that shame? Is he even thinking about it? Is he even remember it? And
Right.
that's what. But I can't wait to read that book. Now, let me flip you to another side and say, when you do these marriage conferences in Canada, and not only you do the comedy, you also give wisdom to the couple. So, do you have any few pointers for us?
Yeah. For every guy, every married man out there, there's 5 things you need to. It's Gary Chapman has the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
I have the 5. I have the 5. Forever statements that you need to learn for your marriage. And for every guy that's listening, you might want to get a pen out. The first statement is, "I'm sorry." The second statement is, "This will never happen again." The third statement is, "You deserve much better than this." The fourth is, "It's all my fault." And number 5, "You're the most beautiful woman in the world, and I love you very much." Now, there's a bonus. Now, if you buy the book, which there is none, but if you buy the book, the bonus sentence is, "I love what you've done with your hair." So, yeah, it's funny. I tell you, man, I love doing that. Just going back to what you said, the 2 Corinthians 10:5, destroying speculations and every lofty thing that raises itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. That's the shame verse for me, man. That's the one I go, no, you're not coming in. But
Right.
anyway, and the shame thing, when you read I'm gonna send you a copy. It's called the whiteboard. And shame, like you're talking familiar thing, I do this thing. I do an illustration of a whiteboard where, if you know how you write on a whiteboard and then you erase it, even though you erased it, it's still there. You can still see it written there. And even though you erased it, it's like, you've got to go and you've got to get like the cleaner out to do it. And the cleaner is, for us, it's the blood of Jesus, the gospel. So that whiteboard is that kind of this 3rd and 4th generations. It's like I inherited the shame. But the thing I love about the marriage event is that it's safe for guys. Like I don't know about you, man. Sometimes Kathy and I've gone to marriage conferences and stuff. We've been married 35 years. And it's like, let's beat up the husbands. And I personally was like, I'm kind of getting like tired of this. It's like, I want to be a better husband, all that, but would you stop beating up the husbands, And
Right.
so what I did was I wanted to use comedy, and I don't beat up on anybody, but I shine the spotlight on this and this and this and this. And so I tell real stories. I have Kathy's permission. I tell real stories about life in our life, but I draw from 15 years, because I was five in Nashville as a youth and 10 years in Georgia as the senior associate. Naz, the conversations that I would have doing pastoral marriage counseling with couples are priceless. And I talk about them. And they're funny. They're sad at the same time. They're heartbreaking, but they're funny because of what the people are fighting about. And so what I do is I take people through the whole thing. And then part of the night is, in the couples night, I do a shortened version of Who the Pooh Are You? I teach the couple, I say, I'm going to teach you how to fight on the way home tonight. And, I always tell the guys, if you do this right tonight, you may get lucky when you get home. So, the guys are like, they're paying attention and they got their notes out, and the women are going, yes. But, but the thing that I love about it is, my friend Eric Spath, who helped me put it together. Eric's like a brother to me. One of the things that he said to me, because he was at the inception of this tour. He actually created it. It was like, hey, do this and this and this and this, because he was kind of watching what I was doing anyway, and said, hey, why don't you do it like this and do this, this, and then this. So he actually put that evening together from start to finish, and had me do what I do, but he kind of sectioned it out. Just brilliant guy, just incredible live performance. He's not a performer, but he's a great event guy. And Eric would tell me, he's, I don't know, we've done hundreds of these. He'd say, Steve, I want to set up a time-lapse camera in the back of every auditorium we go into. He said, because when we show up, the couples are sitting like this far apart. And he said, by the end of the night, they're like this, and they got their arms around each other.
Yeah. Wow.
And he goes, it happens every night. And he's up in the soundboard, he's watching it, making sure that all the audio-visual stuff's going the way it's supposed to happen. And he told me, he said the most rewarding thing for him was watching every night, watching these couples who would come in kind of like fighting on the way to the show, walking their arms around each other. So, and that's the beauty of the gospel, but also our craft, which is comedy. It's like we can say things that may be close to the bone, but if you're laughing about it, and you know this, man, the thing that makes comedy works is when it's true. If it's not true, it's not funny, unless it's something totally implausible. Like if you do a routine about, I was talking to my dog the other day, and my dog came to me. Well, everybody knows, everybody can suspend belief for a while and go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to take the premise that your dog talked to you, because everybody knows a dog can't talk. So you can suspend reality and all that for the sake of the joke. But when you're telling something where you're trying to get something across, if it's not true, man, there's something about it. It just kind of rings hollow.
Right.
I love doing that show. There's two versions of it. One's called Couples Night Out, and the other one's called A Night to Remember. And they're probably the most rewarding, other than like the prisons that you and I did together. The most rewarding work I've ever done in my life. And I still do stand up. Like I was out in Sacramento. I was out in your neck of the woods. Last month.
Tell me, what are you working on right now? What's in
Well, I'm working. Al Fike and I are putting together this tour. He and I are like, we're these old guys that are like, does anybody even want to hear us anymore? And Al, Al's the guy that plays the saw and plays the banjo.
I love this guy. I love Al. Man, I need to catch up with him.
You do. You need to have him on your show, man. He is.
Yes, I would love to. I completely forgot.
Buddy, get ready, man, because he's going to be loaded up with caffeine, so you got to stay up with him. But he's quick. Doing that, and then right now I'm working on a couple of more. I've written some children's books that I've never published, and now I'm about ready to do it. They're called Children's Stories for Grown-ups, and it's stories that you can read to your child, but while the parent's reading it, they're going, oh,
that's for me.
That's for me. But it's teaching the child a life lesson, but it's having the parents go, oh, wow. And then the other thing, and I don't know, Kathy's been wanting me to do a marriage book. I just, I'm gonna let the experts do the marriage books. I'll do the live comedy stuff, but I don't know if I want to do a marriage book. But the one I think and it's funny you asked me, because I haven't even told anybody. Kathy knows, or I mentioned to her that I had an idea of something, but I wanted to address depression, and because it's something that I never was comfortable talking about, and it's so prevalent now, and I think there's a way to deal with it, but using humor to say, hey, look, I know it's real. I know, man, I've been there. I've had those days where I don't know if I can get out of this bed, but to be able to overcome it and to be able to use humor to get that across. So it would be kind of like, it'd be kind of the Shameless format, but it would be on depression. And it's just, and it's the working title is, uh, I don't need plastic leaves on my dead tree, or don't glue. What is it? Don't glue plastic leaves on my dead tree is what it is. Right? It's like, don't come in and make, it's like, come sit with me and go, yeah, your tree's dead, but it's not really dead. It's just dormant right now.
Let me ask
Seasons,
you this.
man.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Steve. The dream of being on the Carson show, what was it replaced with?
A conversation I had in Haiti with my son in 2009. It's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of those things, like, I never achieved it and everything, and so it's like, because we all have goals and stuff, and so it was 2009, I think, 2011. That was 2011. My son and I were in Haiti, and we were
With
working
New Missions?
New Life missions, New Life, New Life.
Tim, with Tim, right?
Oh
Tim.
no, this is with Mission Discovery with.
Oh, okay, no problem. I went with Tim and New Missions to Haiti. Okay.
But now we went with New Life, New Life Children's Home, which is an orphanage, and they specialize in children with special needs. And
Oh man.
but my son and I, he was an intern, and he was, I think he was in his first year of college already. Had finished his first year of college. Yeah, I did. And we were working in Haiti. It was so hot and everything, and we never talked about. I mean, they knew the story, but we never talked about it. It wasn't something that was ever like, I rarely even, the story I told earlier about the developmental deal. I rarely ever talk about it. Just don't do it. And but Graham knew the story and everything. And out of the clear blue, Naz, he goes, "Hey, Dad, you ever regret turning down that developmental deal?"
Oh, I got asked that a lot by my son.
And
Okay, go ahead.
And I said, no, not for a second. He said, "Oh, come on, Dad. Come on. It's me. We're digging a hole for an outhouse in Haiti. Come on, man." And I said, "No." I said, "Graham, even on those days when your mother doesn't find me particularly attractive, and you and your sister think I'm the most uncool person on the planet, I have not regretted it for a single moment." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because, son, as much as I hate to admit this about myself as a young man, a character back then, if I had taken that offer and moved to LA and left you and your sister and your mom behind in Nashville, I was a young man. I could have easily forgotten that I was a married man with 2 kids, because Hollywood has a way of pulling out the dark side of people. It's in there, and if it comes out through the light of Christ, it's great because it's redeemed. But if it comes out in the wrong environment, it can be a monster that's unleashed." And I said, my concern is that, I said, if I had taken that deal, you might have grown up hating me, because I wasn't the kind of dad that was at home, that was with you, that was at, PTO president and all that. And I said, "Graham," I said, "I would not trade this conversation with you, sweating our butts off in Haiti and this crap, for all the money in the world. I would not trade our relationship." And he never said another word about it. We've never talked about it again. And it was that what replaced it was, there's a great passage in Joel 2:25 that says, "I will repay," says the Lord, "for the years the locusts have eaten." I grew up without a dad, pined for a dad, and even as a grown up in my 30s, 40s, I still kind of had this kind of umbilical, kind of spiritual umbilical cord that I would always try to plug into an older man to kind of find some kind of fatherly acceptance, And when I realized that through God's Holy Spirit, through just the insight and strength that He gave me to do it, um, I would I gave up that dream to fulfill my destiny, right? Which
Mm.
to be their dad and to do what I'm doing. And the irony of all ironies too is my son was born May 31st, 1992. Johnny Carson's last show was May 22nd, 1992.
Wow.
So, yeah. So when I look back at all of it, when my son was born, the Carson thing was, he retired. He retired 2 weeks before my son was 10 days before my son was born. And, it's weird. It's like when I accepted Jesus as my savior, that was one thing. But then when he said, okay, now you have an offer that is to allow me to be the Lord of your life. I saved you. You're good. Do you want me to be your Lord? Yeah. Okay. And that required a different set of choices. And honestly, man, I have never regretted it. I still to this day, man, I'm here at my daughter-in-law or my daughter's. I'm at my daughter's house with my son-in-law's out on a business trip, and Kathy and I are here helping take care of 8-week-old twins, and
Oh, 8-week-old twins. That's amazing.
8-week-old twins, man. And my daughter had twin boys, and Naz, I will never be famous, but at least I'll be known. Hopefully, my kids will say my dad was never famous, but he was faithful, and he took care of my mom. He took care of us, and he's enjoying being a grandpa. So, and thank you for asking that question. It's funny, nobody's ever asked me that question before, and I almost didn't know what to say. But then I realized, man, I've been waiting my whole career to answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, my son asked me that. My daughter asked me that. I said, you know what? If I took that deal, you probably would be visiting me either in a rehab center
Yeah,
or you would be seeing me once every few weeks because I wouldn't be the man that
yeah.
the father you knew, and that's how it is. Al Fike just jumped in and said he loves. We love you, Al Fike. Al Fike, call me. We need to have you on the podcast. And
Yeah, I'll make sure you have his number. Yeah,
yeah, I have his number. I just been so unkind to Al Fike and not calm because he's always been the greatest, sweetest man. Last time we performed together at a homeless shelter in Second Street in Texas, in Dallas, I asked him to join me, and he didn't say no. He's like, "Okay, I'll be there," and he brought his saw and he played the saw, and they loved him.
well,
Listen, how can people get a hold of you?
you can
How
go.
can
If they
people
want to
book
book,
you?
yeah, if they want to book me, go to the Grable Group, Tim Grable, the Grable Group, or they can check out. They can go to stevegeyercomedy.com, which is my website. It's kind of like it's basically just it's a lander. It's basically just a business card on the internet.
Steve
And
Geyer Comedy,
Steve Geyer
Geyer Comedy.
GEYR, stevegeyercomedy.com. They can get the book. They can get both books on Amazon. It's just Steve Geyer Shameless or Steve Geyer Who the Pooh Are You. And you can get those on Amazon, and I think they're both on Kindle as well. There's not an audiobook yet. I got to read that thing.
Yeah.
And but yeah, they can hit me up on social and stuff, and tell everybody to please. I'm round the corner now. I'm hoping to get to 3 million on my last dry bar comedy special. So we eclipsed the 2 million mark. So we're over
Good.
2 million, like in another 250,000. So once you get that next 250,000, it's like, okay, now you can work to get to the next full million. So I'm hoping to get 3 million views on that. So, and then just, look for me and Al, and maybe I'll be able to jump on some Naz dates open for you.
Yeah, well, no, I would love to share the stage with you guys. So
Yeah.
thank
I
you
like,
so much, man, for your time. I appreciate it. Say
oh,
thank you to Kathy and the grandkids for taking the time to be with us.
I will
All
do it.
right. Thank you, brother. We'll appreciate you, Steve.
Hey, you too, my friend. Thank you so much, man. God bless
Thank
you.
you. God bless you. And thank you guys for watching and being with us. We really appreciate it. If you loved this show, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if you benefited from it, just go and subscribe to it or let your friends know about it. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you so much. And if you need to know where I'm going to be at, just go to NazarethUSA.com, NazarethUSA.com, and check on the calendar, and you'll see where I'm going to be. And hopefully, I'll come and see you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and God bless you. Have a great night.